Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's Chris here again with Fantastic Reviews. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. And you know what? I've been thinking a lot lately. It's almost the end of July. August is upon us. What does that mean? It means that many, many hearts are going to be broken and saddened. That the Criterion Barnes & Noble sale, and Arrow sale, mind you, is going to be ending. We won't get another sale until, I think, November. So I was thinking, you know what, there's a lot of people posting what they've been picking up. One of them being Nathan Jones. He loves to, show off to me what he's picked up. It's just a joke. But no, so everyone's posting what they've been picking up. There's a bunch of Blu-ray haul videos at the Barnes & Noble sales. And I was thinking, what are like my top 5 Criterion films? Like if I had to go to a Barnes & Noble and someone put a gun to my head and said, pick 5 right now, like what are you going to pick? Which has happened to me before with Nathan Jones at a Barnes & Noble. That's maybe not a joke. No, but so like, yeah, seriously, what are my top 5 Criterion pickups? Like if you were going to go pick up 5 and you're thinking of me, which is usually common when you probably think of Criterion, you probably would say, what are top 5, what are the films that Fantastic Reviews recommends? Like I said, this is like my top 5. This isn't like the top 5 you have to pick up. This is just a personal list of mine. I want to hear everyone's down below what theirs are while you're watching this video. Like, what are your top 5s? So without further ado, let's talk about them. I'm going to start with 2 honorable mentions first because they really deserve them. And yeah, and they have a little bit of a story behind them. So, and if you want to hear more about Criterion movies, I definitely recommend check out Nathan Jones' channel. I'm always usually on there too. We usually do some reviews and Criterion Closet picks on there too. So I'll put a link to his channel down below. So let's talk about the 2 honorable mentions I have. So my first one is obviously The Seventh Samurai. Seventh Samurai is one of Kurosawa's best, and it's actually the only one I've seen. I've heard lots about him as a director. I really want to check out Ikiru. I've heard Throne of Blood, Rashomon are really fantastic movies. Ran, which is a Studio Canal release, I believe. But this movie, Seven Samurai, is awesome. If you're going to check out any of them, I would check out this one first. I did, and yeah, it's like almost 4 hours long. But it goes by so quick. The cinematography is amazing. The set design is amazing. The acting is top-notch. The story is very, very well crafted, and you can definitely see when you're watching something like Star Wars or later directors, a lot of them are influenced by Seven Samurai, and this movie only came out in 1954, which I believe was also the same year as Godzilla, but don't quote me on that. A little bit of a possible wink to Spy Number 1000 there. Seven Samurai, it was an amazing movie. I saw it with my roommate Seth, and him and I, it was just a fun day. That's really why I also want this as an honorable mention. It just could not reach that top 5, but it's because the story of my roommate and I, we took the day off, we watched Paris, Texas, we watched back-to-back Dragon Ball Z movies, Nathan Jones was there for a little bit, and then we got ready for Seven Samurai. We spent the rest of that day just watching this, and man, it was awesome. It was just, it was like a checklist moment for me, just checking this movie out. So Seven Samurai misses it at an honorable mention. The next honorable mention I have that just missed out is Dressed to Kill by Brian De Palma. I've seen a few Brian De Palma movies. I've seen Scarface, and I want to say there's one more I maybe checked out, but I can't think off the top of my head. But Dressed to Kill is one from Daniel Epler, who's been on my channel before during their Christmas special. Him and I are collaborating on another future project you might see in the next week or so. He runs the Cobwebs podcast, which I've mentioned before, which I definitely recommend as well to check out. So he loves Brian De Palma, and he got this for me actually on my birthday, Dressed to Kill. So that's why it's on here. I want to talk about it because he got it to me as a birthday present. That meant a lot to me. So I really need to check this out ASAP. And it's kind of Carrie's the other Brian De Palma movie I couldn't think about. Sorry for just thinking like that right now. But Dressed to Kill. Brian De Palma, haven't seen it. I've heard a lot about it from Daniel. Talks a lot about it, and if he recommends it, then it's definitely worth checking out. So maybe I'll do a review on that. Okay, so those are my honorable mentions. So here are my top 5 Criterions to pick up. Number 5 is going to be a gift from Nathan Jones, which is My Dinner with Andre. My Dinner with Andre, I watched by myself. I was just in the mood for something different, and I remember I got this as a gift and I haven't seen it yet. And Nathan kind of told me it was just something that you have to pay attention to. And I finally got in that mindset to pay attention to a movie. Because, I never pay attention to a movie. But I definitely understood what he meant by this. It is a very different type of movie. It is very intelligent. It is very sophisticated. It's almost philosophical. It's highbrow. It's very much a story. Well, there's really not much of a story. It's mostly just a conversation piece put on film. It's between Andre Gregory and Wallace Shawn, and they're basically just having a conversation between each other in a very nice fancy restaurant, in New York City. Andre Gregory is this man who's very sophisticated and very well spoken, and he travels the world. And he hasn't talked to Wallace or he calls him Wally. Hasn't talked to him in forever. They used to be playwrights together. And he's basically telling him his perspective on life from what he's seen and experienced, what he thinks the future is going to look like. Mind you, this is in 1981 too, so the future then looked crazier than what we have today. Wally is just kind of listening. He's this down-on-his-luck playwright with a girlfriend in one of the flats in NYC, and he's taking life how it goes. He never really thought of himself as this really intellectual person, but when talking to Andre, it kind of comes out of him. And there's these conversations about our civilization and comparing it to other places around the world, and how Andre Gregory sees things from that perspective way better than how he sees American society. It's nothing like apolitical or anything like that. It's just the everyday things we do without actually thinking about why we do them and how they affect us or everything around us is very interesting. There's one point in this movie where Andre Gregory talks about New York City and how everyone talks about wanting to leave, but no one actually does ever leave. And he thinks it's because, and he says it very, very elegantly, and I think it was incredible how he delivered it. He talks about how the people have convinced themselves they're their own bodyguards, and they're the reason that they've trapped themselves in New York. And I think that's a really interesting type of way of looking at it. Like, you kind of become the person who doesn't allow yourself to leave things, because stability and routine is very much a desire as humans. For the most part, we like to get in a routine. We like to do the same things. And Andre Gregory shows like this is a very dangerous cycle and a very dangerous way of living. And he also goes on a tangent about electric blankets and just how the concept of electric blankets sounds frightening. You put on something that keeps you warm, but it's electrical that could shock you and it could kill you. And Wally, he's kind of the person watching. He's the audience. He's the one who's giving conversation to Andre and kind of discussing his perspective, which is, I believe, the general audience perspective on these highbrow intellectual thoughts that Andre Gregory has. And Wally goes toe-to-toe, and it kind of makes sense. He says, I like an electric blanket. It's cold in New York City in the wintertime. I like to have it on and keep warm instead of having to pay a high bill for the heat to heat my apartment and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's very obvious then. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that? But then, when you get caught up in Andre Gregory talking, which is very, very well-spoken dialogue from him, it makes a lot of sense. It kind of makes you think about who you are and what you're doing in the now and like what kind of person you're going to be after. But at the end of the day, it's just a film about two longtime friends who haven't seen each other before, which I've definitely been in that situation. One of my best friends back home in when high school, he went to Dartmouth, and we spoke off and on, and when he went back home and I went back home, we would have a night together. We'd have these highbrow intellectual conversations, and I remember being on that end of being kind of, because he went to Dartmouth, obviously, and have those conversations about highbrow intellectual things and maybe coming from a more general perspective as well. And I think that's why I really enjoyed this movie, is because I can really understand both sides of the conversation. And that being said, I think this movie does have that kind of perplexing, very pretentious conversation. I can definitely see why this movie could turn people off in that aspect, but I really recommend watching this movie. There's actually 2 more movies by Gregory and Shawn where it's like 42nd Vienna, and there's the I think it's like Brick Builder, I believe. It's a box set. I definitely recommend getting that because if you like this movie, you're gonna want to watch more. Thank you, Nathan Jones, for this movie. It's definitely made me grow and advance more as an adult, and it was just a really great movie. So that's my number 5. I also talked about this and highlighted a little bit more on Nathan and I's Criterion Closet Pick video as well. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about this film, and yeah, number 5. Number 4 is it's probably my favorite Coen Brothers movie, and it has a sweet Criterion release, and that's Inside Llewyn Davis. Inside Llewyn Davis is a very tragic story of a folk singer played by the amazing Oscar Isaac. It's kind of like pre-Bob Dylan-esque, and he's just this scrapping by musician who's trying to survive, and he has this cat, and you kind of feel for Oscar Isaac's character a lot in the choices he makes. He's put in very hard situations. He has a relationship with a woman who he had gotten pregnant and has a kid. He has to scrap money for her. He's trying to chase his dreams of becoming an artist in the 1960s. The cinematography from the Coen Brothers is honestly it's some of their best. I think the lighting and just like the mood that the film is being shot like is definitely impressive. It has like a really more blue pale palette, and I think that really puts on an effect for the dread and like the somberness of Oscar Isaac's character, who's also named Llewyn Davis, and it's very well made. It's just, I think it's one of these overlooked Coen brother films, and I don't understand why. Oscar Isaac should have been nominated for this movie, and he wasn't. John Goodman's in it as well. He's a very over-the-top character, and he has a very interesting conversation scene where it pans from the entrance all the way to where they're sitting, which is very, very cool. So this is also Adam Driver's in this movie too, and he has a really great singing segment, which Oscar Isaac also sings in this movie with his own voice, and it's amazing. But it's funny to see Kylo and Poe Dameron next to each other singing folk music. If my Star Wars fans are watching, you'd understand that. There's this cat, which really stands for like a symbol of Llewyn in a way, and you feel for the cat when something bad happens to it. There's moments of choices that Llewyn Davis makes in this movie that you just want to bite your fist and go, why? No, don't do that. And it just adds to the drama. It's a very honest portrayal of struggling people, and I think the Coen brothers really knocked this movie out. So thank you, Ethan and Joel, for this amazing movie, and Criterion for putting it out. Seth and I love this movie so much too, so definitely check it out. My number 3 pick, it was a gift for my girlfriend, and I love it so much. It's an amazing film by Elia Kazan, and that's obviously Marlon Brando in On the Waterfront. Another 1954 film came out the same year as Seven Samurai. This is a gorgeous release by Criterion. I've been eyeing it for a while. And when I got it, I immediately had to watch it. This is actually one of Scorsese's favorite movies as well. And I adore Scorsese and his film taste. So when he says he loves a movie, you should probably check it out. But Elia Kazan, who's made countless other great movies, he won obviously for The Gentleman's Agreement. And he's just... He also has another Criterion release, I think, A Face in the Crowd, which recently came out. But this movie, this might be his best. I really love the story structure of this movie. It's about a guy, Terry, played by, obviously, Marlon Brando, who is a down on his luck a dock worker who at one time had a chance to get out of the docks to become a prize fighter boxer. And he gets caught up with this union boss named Johnny, I believe. Let's see if he's played by Lee Cobb, who's actually a very well played character. You actually feel like he feels like a union boss. He's very, very optimistic and opportunistic, and just a horrible, horrible man. And you can see Terry's disdain for him, but also love and adoration, because Terry, as being a boxer in whatever, I think it was also taking place in the 50s. I mean, he's not going to be very smart, and I don't mean that in a bad condescending way, but he's a naive kid compared to everyone else. But Marlon Brando gets caught up in this murder mystery, and there's witnesses, and he's trying to get his name cleared on all of this. And there's a big struggle between the working class and the union work leaders, which also has a lot to say. I think it's why Elia picked that kind of concept, was to talk about the atrocities of the workplace environment, because you see old men struggling to get scrapped by. I mean, the only way people were getting jobs in this movie, or the union boss would just pick random people and say, you get to work today, you get to work today, and you get to work today. And the rest of everyone else had to spend the rest of their day not earning any pay or trying to earn a buck, or they're just going out and drinking. So very sad, realistic take on what it was like being a worker during this time, and being on the waterfront. You know, it's like it's steel mills, it's working on the docks, really hard men. Some people, and with the union bosses having control of everything, they paid extra to certain people who would pick the workers. So some people would rub elbows to get the job over other people, so there's an unfair advantage for some, and it's really sad, and it's kind of disgusting to see that's how it was, and then that portrayal. But Terry's lucky, because Terry's older brother, Charlie, who's played by Rod Steiger, he's in really good with Johnny and the entire union mob, basically. And Terry's just kind of been told what to do and been taken care of. And there's a few guys who have had it with Terry, because Terry's the prized child. He's the one that gets treated right. And Terry doesn't ask for that, because Terry just he just wanted to be a boxer, and that kind of got taken away from him because he lost a big fight. And you know, when there's this whole murder mystery that happens, Terry actually befriends a person, the woman whose brother was the one that got murdered. And that becomes a conflict of interest with Terry and Johnny. So it's a very interesting dynamic. There's also a priest, so you bring religious aspects of into this movie in the conflict, and kind of trying to navigate what the real problem of this whole situation is. And it's very interesting how that's approached. And obviously on the cover you see Terry with doves. And it's a really good symbolism for being able to be free, to be pure, because I think that's what Terry really wants to be, and Terry isn't allowed to. He's robbed of that chance. This movie is obviously in black and white, which I think really fits it well. Even if this was made in color, I think black and white still would fit the movie tone way more. So I'm glad for that. There's a lot of surprising scenes in this movie, scenes of horror, I would say. A lot of shock value at times. Marlon Brando, maybe at his best in this movie. He's freaking fantastic. I love Marlon Brando, and I watch a lot with him in it. And I mean, this is a knockout performance, because I mean, he's a boxer, of course it's a knockout. But now he's so good in this movie, and he delivers one of the most iconic scenes of, like, I could have been a somebody. I'm not going to quote it, but if you want to watch that scene, you can just look it up on YouTube. It's an amazing scene, and when you watch this movie and understand the context behind it, man, you really feel for his character in this movie. I think it's a movie about classism. It's about like workplace environments. It's kind of about wanting to escape your environment. It's also about like lost opportunity. It's such a well-made movie, and the ending honestly has always stuck with me. It is such a powerful ending, and the fact this movie was made in '54, I mean, it's really stood the test of time in my opinion. So on the Waterfront, I definitely recommend it. It won 8 Oscars, including Best Picture. So if you're a cinephile, this is one you definitely need to check out. Okay, so we're down to the top 2. If anybody knows me, I think these next 2 won't be really much of a surprise. But number 2 is going to be Noah Baumbach's Frances Ha. Frances Ha, I just love so much. It's a 2013 film, so it's a pretty recent one. Starring Greta Gerwig. I love Greta Gerwig. She also directed Lady Bird, which I absolutely love. But she's starring this movie with her husband and or partner. I think they're just together. I don't know if they're married, but she's the star of this movie. She plays Frances, and Frances is this like 20-something-year-old living in New York City. She's a ballet dancer. She does not have her life together. It's shot in black and white, which is genius by Noah. I think I'm a sucker for black and white in movies. I think it's awesome, but I think it really fits. Like it fits that auteur look, kind of like an inside look at the life of a young, not a young, but like a mid-20s woman. I think it really fits that kind of mood. But Noah Baumbach really writes the story well, and Greta plays it to perfection. Frances can't get her life together, simple as that. She for her age, and you see out the movie her progression. She's just very naive. She's kind of like not wanting to grow up. She's bouncing from person to person, and it's all because of her fault of her own. I mean, she's trying to chase her dream of being a ballet dancer. She's really riding on this ballet performance that may or may not come to her. And at the same time, she's just trying to live a normal life. And that's what I really love about this movie. It feels like I'm actually watching a real person's life unfold, and how you kind of rise from the ashes. She makes very irrational decisions that a lot of us, not maybe exactly all of us, but some people would actually make. Like, she goes on a trip to France, excuse me, and just puts it on a new credit card she just got. And someone goes, "Is that smart? Should you do that?" And she's like, "I don't know." Yeah, a lot of people put stuff on their credit card that they're not supposed to. That's very obvious. And she's, always being the hyper one. And really, the reason she acts this kind of way is because she feels alone. She's away from her parents. In the beginning of the movie, it shows her relationship with her best friend, and she's getting over this relationship. And her best friend is now moving on to a different relationship. So everyone around her is moving on or getting away from her. And she feels alone, and she doesn't understand why. And as an audience, when we watch this movie, it really is just showing the progression of life. It really shows how each person is different in their maturity and their growth. And I really appreciate that by Noah. He has such an eye for that. If you watch his other movies, you really notice that he has a slice of life mentality when he's making movies, and they're very honest portrayals. I respect that so much. So Frances Ha's another one, and I love how it's the perspective of a female. I feel like that's not very well represented in this industry, and I think Noah really did that well with Frances Ha. I feel like it's honest, and it works for both men and women, but I think it really fits in this context of a woman, because there's some really bad guys in this movie. Adam Driver's in it, and he's not a bad guy, but his character is pretty rough. I would also see While We're Young, which he's in there too. Talk about more slice of life from Noah. But that's another movie I recommend. But Frances Ha, I mean, it'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it'll kind of make you root for Frances. And when you're done with this movie, you kind of go, okay, what's gonna happen next? But you have to just smile and leave and go, I know Frances is gonna be okay. She's gonna get it together. And I really love that. I think as somebody who's in his early 20s and living alone, with just friends, just like kind of Frances is, I definitely relate to a lot of the things she's going through and acting. I mean, I act that way sometimes. I don't put anything all on my credit card, obviously, but just like the mannerism she does and the way she acts, I can relate to a lot of it. And I think it's a comfort movie for, like, I think everything will be okay at the end of the day. So I definitely recommend Frances Ha as my number 2. And finally, I mean, like I said, whoever knows me and is watching this definitely knows my taste. Not surprised with this one. I've talked about it obviously before. And my number 1 is The Squid and the Whale. Squid and the Whale is my number 1 Criterion. It was my first ever. It's one I've wanted for a very, very long time. It's another Noah Baumbach movie. I think I love Noah Baumbach. Jesse Eisenberg, Jeff Daniels, Laura Linney, Owen Klein as this family. One of the Baldwin brothers, I think it's William Baldwin. Noah Baumbach wrote this movie based partially on his life. He was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, yada yada. This movie is amazing, 2005. It's basically about a broken family, and he handles it with such a tenderness and honesty that's sometimes hard to watch, maybe sometimes to relate to. But I think we all can appreciate the honesty, the incredible filmmaking he does with this. And I think just the kind of, it sounds weird, but like kind of like how recovering for something so tragic as a family being broken, kind of like the resolutions. I mean, does everything get fully resolved? No, but you have to appreciate the characters' arc being completed and realizing whether they're failures or they're successors. And kind of accepting the faults of people. I think this movie really captures that well. And I love how the cover is them at a tennis court, because on the tennis court where things get fixed, relationships are mended, but also a lot of tension grows, and you can really see that through the game in the movie, and I love that so much. Jeff Daniels plays the father. He's a teacher, professor of sorts, who's having an affair with a student. And I think he's a college professor. Has to be really weird. I think he's a college professor. God, I hope he was. I can't remember. But anyway, he's having an affair basically, and so his wife is having an affair with him too because he's so egotistical and pretentious, and she's just wanting to be revitalized. She feels like her life is so stagnant, and it's not being really progressed well because Jeff Daniels is really neglecting her. They're both authors, and they compete with each other. Jesse and his brother, they're kind of caught in the middle. They don't know what's really going on. They have to choose sides between parents, and it's kind of sad to see. It really is. But it is such a well represented movie for like damaged homes and like the psychosis of like what kids have to go through, kind of what the parents have to go through too. And I just really applaud this movie by Noah Baumbach. It's definitely a dramedy. It's not comical at all. I think that it's kind of more black comedy, if anything, because it's kind of sad, weird humor at points. But I think it has a lot to do with just personal stories, and movies that have something personal for the director, I think, are very important to watch. So I definitely recommend Squid and the Whale. I talk about this movie too much to begin with. I know Nathan Jones has seen it and liked it. I saw it with Seth, and I know Seth really liked it too. But yeah, check it out. Squid and the Whale. Fantastic movie. Those were my Criterion pickups, top 5. It's during the sale. I actually haven't picked up anything from Barnes & Noble, but I did pick up 2 new ones. One of them, if you haven't noticed, was Night of the Living Dead. I picked that up on Amazon. It was really cheap. It was like $17, so I picked that up. And then I also ordered Night of the Hunter on eBay. I got it at an auction deal. So sorry, Barnes & Noble. I just found it at a cheaper place, and keep providing those deals. I'd love to hear what everyone's picking up. What are their top 5s in the collection? I know there's so many that it's hard to put it just to 5. Hopefully, number 1,000 has to do with this big guy right here. But we'll see. So thank you all for watching. Like I said, check out Nathan Jones' channel. I'll put a link to his channel down below in the videos him and I are in. We talk about Criterion a lot. Check out Daniel's podcast, Cobwebs. I've talked about that before. Actually, him and I are collaborating, so look out for that in the next video. I'll put a link to that down below. Check him out on Twitter as well. Check me out on Twitter and interact with me on Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd. I want to shout out Chris Bowie. I was gonna say Stuckman, about Chris Bowie and Filmstock. Really great channel. They just did like a top 5 Tarantino movies, which is awesome. Llewyn's Collection, Daisuke. If I'm missing anybody else, I'm sorry, but just check these movies out. I really like how the community's going, and I want to hear more about those Criterions, and also maybe some Arrows too, because we need more horror on this channel, and it's also an Arrow sale, so don't neglect. Anyway, my name's Chris here again with Fantastic Reviews, and I'll see you next time.